hottest station is now live for your enjoyment with host iamBranded.
Perfect person to talk about certain different things that's going on, not just with children, but just family life and things like that. And we also want to say this show is brought to you by www.facelessnation.org, and we want to go ahead and welcome Miss Tracy in the house tonight on Tuesday Ladies Night. What's up, sweetie?
Well, hey, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here sharing with you and your listeners tonight and hopefully helping men and women to live with purpose, ignite their passions, visualize their dreams, and just embrace a better vision of the future through some of the life experiences that I've had.
Well, I'm glad you're on, and I appreciate the the time you're taking tonight to be able to come on and talk about certain things. And the people that do not know you and what you're trying to do, give the listeners a little background about everything that you're doing right now.
Okay, well, I've always been passionate about self-development and personal growth, and, my self-esteem was always really high on its own, but because of some of the traumas that I went through with the situation that we'll be talking about tonight, at one point, all of that kind of made me forget who and what I was, and I think that happens to a lot of people. I believe that we're all born to greatness, and we possess such infinite power within ourselves, but again, sometimes stuff in life happens to us, and it blocks that energy and just prevents us from realizing our true abundant gifts. I can talk a little bit about what the book is or why the book is and the Indiegogo project, if that's okay. And then I also put together 10 tips that I can share with everyone a little bit later on how to handle overwhelm if they ever happen to find themselves in that situation as well.
Absolutely. So with facelessnation.org, and the history of it as far as how it was put together, give a little history, listeners a little bit of history about it.
Okay. All right. Well, in order to go forward with Faceless Nation, I have to give a little bit of background, if that's okay. And
sure.
I know a lot of people, we're talking about specifically something called RAD, or reactive attachment disorder, and a lot of listeners probably are not familiar with that. But what it stands for is, again, reactive attachment disorder, and it's a severe psychological disorder where children have been so traumatized that they honestly believe that if they allow themselves to feel love and to bond with someone, that they'll die. So they do everything in their power, and I mean everything, to make sure that connection never happens. And it's almost as if I'm going to get you before you get me mentality. And so a lot of kids, they've come through the foster care system. They may have been moved around over and over. It happens in biological families as well, but, more so in kids who've been through the system. And so every child who's been adopted, in my opinion, probably has some sort of an attachment issue, but most of them will form bonds with their families and things over time. In severe cases, like with reactive attachment disorder, which our daughters were, that never happens, and they constantly try to reject anything that you do to try to connect with them, just as a self-protective measure. They have so much rage inside. It's almost, if you can imagine, like a primal scream that just never, ever ends. And so all that rage is just unleashed on whoever it is that is closest to them, and usually that's a primary caregiver or younger siblings or something like that. And in my case, I was just this one big bundle of love. So, I really, really caught it. And there's no cure for RAD. But if you get intervention or help early enough, then sometimes you can kind of impact those kids and try to instill some humanity in there. But, there's a lot of other issues that go into the umbrella diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder. Our children had psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies. They had oppositional, defiant issues, so just a lot of other things. And we actually adopted them in 1999, but from the first week after they came home, as a mother, I knew something was just wrong because there was this level of chaos that you just, it was 24/7 chaos. They never slept. They were just every second. It was almost like a tag team. One would go and another one would come in, but there was always something. And so I was experiencing all these things. For instance, I would almost fall down the stairs, and I would have to ask myself, did that baby just do that to me? And I know that sounds crazy, but, because the kids were 2 and 3 when we adopted, but I would do things like I would push my foot into a flipper and remove my foot would be bloody when I took it out because there was a sharp piece of broken glass stuck down in there.
Wow.
My son would be pushed in front of oncoming cars getting off the school bus, which, the bus stop was right across the street. So, things like that would happen. Family and friends, you're trying to tell people something is not right with these children. And, they're so smiling and sweet and beautiful that it's hard to believe that children that little could have all of this stuff going on. And then the stress on my marriage, because my husband I've known since we were children. But even he can see it. That's how sophisticated and intricate the behaviors are. And that piece right there is one of the main problems that families have, trying to tell somebody that something's wrong with their children because you're not believed.
Right.
So I started writing the book in 2008, and I call it Splintered, One Adoptive Mother's Nightmare Journey of RAD and How She Transformed Her Life in spite of it all. Because I felt fractured in so many different ways. I was broken, my kids were broken, and there were all these people who needed to come together for our healing, but it just wasn't happening. So I felt like my life was just broken shards of glass, jagged, painful, and, there were all these splinters of hurt. I was telling my story over and over to therapists, to psychiatrists, to judges, to everyone, and people were literally laughing in my face and telling me that I was the crazy one. They wanted to fix me, and, they wanted to fix my parenting style and not really address the mental illness that was going on in my children. So my son was on 3 coma watches before he was even 11 years old from the head trauma that he received from his siblings. And, there was always something chaotic. They didn't sleep. Once I tried, because they didn't sleep, and I decided I was going to prove to myself that these children could not stay awake all night and just go on all engines the next day. So I was going to stay up with them and prove them wrong. And, it took me 3 days to recover, but they were just going like nothing had ever happened. And so as a result of all of that, I kind of found myself falling deeper and deeper into depression, feeling lost, and at some point even considering suicide, because to me at that point, life just, it seemed like it would be better not to be on the planet than to have to live with these children like this forever. But I knew that if I left, since no one else could see the behaviors, that my son would be destroyed.
Right.
And so once I made the decision to live, then I also made the choice to fight for both of our lives, no matter what. And as much as I loved my husband of over 20 years, I had to reach the conclusion that I loved myself even more.
Right.
And so making myself recall who I'd been before these girls helped me to kind of move past. There's so much shame and guilt that you feel as if you're abusing the kids. You're not, but you just feel like such a failure because there's so much tied up in people's perceptions and how they make you feel of what a good mother is. And as a matter of fact, even after the children became desperate enough to try to take our lives, there were still people telling me that children belonged with their parents no matter what. And, I understand that in an ideal world and an ideal situation, of course, children belong with their families, but you have to also know when you've done all that you can do as well.
Let me ask you a question. Because it's just kind of going through the website and just kind of reading up on, this particular case, because I've never really known enough about RAD to really get an understanding. But, does it just affect the adopted siblings as far as just the mental aspect, or it could just be a household where the biological parents and the child who's just going through the emotional trauma or something like that? Is it just adopted kids, or is it a lot deeper?
No, it's a lot deeper, actually. It can happen in biological families as well. I think the key piece is the the separation from the primary caregiver at an early age. Now they're two-family income, so the mother is forced in a lot of cases to be out of the home for extended periods of time, and, children are in daycare, and that's not a bad thing in and of itself, but if it's over, if it's an exaggerated case where the children are always in daycare and they rarely ever see their mom or interact with her, and, if there are issues when they're, now I've learned that, even in prenatal stages, if the mother is detached from the baby, that internal connection is broken, and so that can cause issues as well. So it can be a number of things.
What are the early warning signals? Because, I mean, you've kind of told the listeners and myself and Baby Girl a lot about just some of the violent behavior, but as a young person going through the stages of RAD, what are some of the early detections as far as a parent can be able to just check out?
Well, one of the main things is, children who are resistant to touch, they don't like to be touched. It's almost painful to them. They're just very resistant to that. They show no remorse. They are actually kind of cold. There's just no emotion. They just have this deadpan mentality. They seek out gory things. They're drawn to, a lot of them set fires at an early age, and they just have this early, they're usually very intelligent as well. There's superficiality. They can charm the pants off of you and, and just, walk around the corner and hurt you very badly. So those are some of the main things right there, and they do show up from a very, very young age.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So do you think that when the people, that laughed at you and thought you were crazy, do you think that they said all that because, they didn't know about it and it wasn't in the media? Do you think the media had a part to play of them not knowing?
I think I've been studying that and trying to evaluate that myself, as a matter of fact, because since I've gone public with my story, I've had a lot of I know that there's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of confusion, there are a lot of people who have not raised a RAD child who are giving advice to the rest of the world on what they believe RAD is or isn't. And there are a lot of medical directives that are out there about what this illness should be. I'm not sure exactly how much they've interacted with the parents because the bars are so far apart. The people that, when I'm saying they were laughing, I'm talking even as recent as the court case that we just finished in June. These are district attorneys. These are lawyers. These are psychiatrists. These are therapists who should be acting in the best interest of the children, but often aren't. And I think a lot of it is money motivated. With the managed healthcare system, it's almost a perpetual gold mine, assembly line. They can drug kids. They can send them out into the world, pronounce them cured, and they have so much power because they're big bureaucratic industries, and you're just, low and humble mom and dad trying to say something is wrong, and it's just a very, very hard road to try to convince somebody that something is wrong. So a lot of people do know that it's there. They believe that it's there, but it's more profitable to just move kids through the system and say that they're all, they're drugged and they're fine.
You have something up on Indiegogo, and people can go check out Indiegogo.com/Faceless Nation. As far as different things, or not just things, but different goals to reach as far as to help contribute financially to said projects. Tell the listeners a little bit about what's going on the Indiegogo.com/Faceless Nation for the people.
Okay, thanks for allowing me to talk about that as well. Now, our Indiegogo campaign kind of came about because we have a younger son that we were trying to protect from the siblings, but he had to do without so much stuff during the whole time that we were dealing with this ordeal for 15 years with his actually 12 years, and then the 3 years with the court battle. But during that time frame, the girls, even though they attempted murder, they were celebrated as princesses. They were taken on trips. They were given all these things, and I thought about how unfair that was and how much siblings of traumatized children had to lose out on, because we as parents are, all of your energy primarily. If you have a good kid, you hope that that continues and, it can run automatically while you deal with all the trauma and chaos. And
right.
So I thought of how he was feeling and the mothers out there who are feeling broken and dejected and isolated and alone, and I thought it would be great if somehow I could do something to celebrate their spirit, the spirit that allows them to continue to thrive and grow and love and be nurturing to other people, despite all the horrible things that might have happened to them. And so that's how the documentary came about. I wanted to share those stories, but in a fun, entertaining way that would also nurture the traumatized siblings as well, because, you can teach kids a lot of life lessons without just sitting there and lecturing to them. You can have art therapy and music, and there's all kinds of healing things that can go on just knowing that they're not alone.
Right.
And so that was one of the main goals for creating the project, and it's really picking up speed now. We've had a couple of celebrities actually retweet the event, and we're hoping, our goal is to raise $50,000 for the project, but that's, we need so much more than that, but you've got to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
And so that was our starting off point, to just get experience, to get the word out there. And again, this is kind of personal, it's intimate because I'm sharing my story as well, but it's important to reach so many other people and just let them know that that they don't have to be stuck in that position of overwhelm, that they can transform their lives. And so that's the starting point with the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what do people have to do if they want to donate, to this fund or to the documentary?
So we are working towards getting our own 501c3, but at the moment we are fiscally sponsored, which means that people can go to the Indiegogo site, which is indiegogo.com/Faceless Nation, and there are all these perks and rewards starting at $20, $10 actually, that people can donate. And, we have lots of fun rewards and things that they can get for donating. They will get the credit for the nonprofit tax exemption, based on the extent allowable by law. So that's a really good thing. People can feel safe and secure donating and know that the money that is collected, we don't personally collect that. That goes to our fiscal sponsor, which is Fractured Atlas, and, they can Google and learn about the organization as well. But it gives them that sense of security that all the monies collected will go towards the documentary project and to help traumatized siblings and mothers from this point on,
The thing that always shocks me about how lack of I'm trying to use the right term, how it's funny how we all talk about, not just on the station but through life. And I was just having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about that whole concept as far as it takes a village to raise a child. I grew up in that concept. There's a lot of us that had other people other than family members looking out for certain things, because, as parents, you always, you want to make sure that you do your damnness to make sure that you see and you feel everything that your child is going through, as far as not just emotionally, physically, etc. And, something like RAD, I kid you not, Tracy, this is, when it was first brought to my attention, I really did not know enough about it. But after reading and going through some stuff on facelessnation.org, I feel like it's really important for people to just spread this word, because there's a lot of stories, not just your story. There's a lot of things that's going on, not just from the parents' perspective, but these kids that's going through so much emotional trauma. It's crazy.
Right, absolutely. And, and bullying is really big right now. And the thing that I've put out there is no one, and, and this is one of the questions that I had for the court as well. There is nothing out there that I've been able to find in the law that protects siblings from being bullied, hurt, and harassed by other siblings. So that's another whole area of bullying that definitely needs to be looked into. And the other reason that I feel it's important for people to know about RAD, know what it looks like, smells like, feels like, is because one could be sitting right next to you right now. In fact, there was a study that was done, and I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but he said one in, I think it was like 10 people out of 200 could be a psychopath just in a group where you're,
right.
where you're at, and you would never know. And that's darned accurate, because you would never know if your child brought home a friend who had this disorder. You would never know if they married someone who had that disorder until it was too late. So it isn't, it's a societal thing because, especially in the foster care system, these children, a lot of them are not being treated. In our case, for me, I thought an attempted murderer was an attempted murderer was an attempted murderer. You take, you do the deed, you spend time somewhere. You don't get celebrated and paraded around like a star pupil.
Right.
And the child who was the victim is not allowed to speak, even in a children's court. You have no right. So, that is an important piece. And these kids are being put into other families who we had no clue what was wrong with our children. It took me 7 years to figure out they were just trying to drive me crazy. I didn't know what was going on. And today it's a lot better because some people choose to parent these particular children with all of these issues and things. But we had no clue. And so these kids, once they reach a certain age, 16, according to the court here where we are in Michigan, they said at 16 these kids are able to live independently on their own, to work, to live on their own, and do whatever. So every year they age out of the system, and they are unleashed on you and I, and these are conscience-less people.
Right.
Conscience-less, with no remorse. And, I mean, I hear that it's rare all the time, and I'm just not sure that I believe that. I think it's a lot more common, but a lot of people might see bits and pieces of it and say, oh, that's ADHD.
Right, right.
Maybe not.
Because you know what, I was going to ask you that same thing as far as the comparisons, because it's a lot of people out here that listens or they may hear what you're saying, but they may not pay attention, or they may diagnose something completely different than what you're diagnosing. So, we can more or less just kind of kill all the the naysayers out there when they want to try to be the ones to say, well, I don't know what she's talking about. It's ADHD, or they're gonna what do you say to all those people that will self-diagnose as opposed to really seeing a therapist or really getting your child, him or her, checked out?
Well, the one thing that I can say is, I mean, even if you self-diagnose, the chaos and the level of violence is so great, you won't be able to just that won't fly very long. It just will not because they won't let it fly. You can have ADHD and not die. With RAD, a lot of these kids, I have one person that I know had her child, while she was in the car, pour gasoline all around the car and was stopped at the point of lighting the match. That's the difference. It's that level of violence that is there from a very early age. And when you experience that enough, when everyone around you, including yourself, is getting seriously hurt, I'm talking just burns, things that are not ordinary. You can't diagnose, you can't diagnose it yourself. You can't dismiss it, or you can, but you definitely will pay the price, and so will other people around you. And that's the unfortunate part, that there's so many people, again, even doctors and psychiatrists, who they don't even respect their own opinion. Our children were diagnosed by a licensed, credentialed psychiatrist, and another psychiatrist would not even accept that diagnosis as being valid because he had 30 years of experience, and in his opinion, children did not, they don't have true mental illness. They just may have bad behavior. But when you're living through that, you're like, no, I know a behavior. I've raised 4 children, one of whom is 25. So there's a difference between a behavior and a intent to kill, and it can't be mistaken. But because if they don't respect the opinions of each other, it's almost like what chance do the parents have in trying to convince somebody that it's real when even, you're you're laughing at your peers and the diagnosis.
I agree.
And, it's an ego thing. But while you're celebrating your ego, children are being hurt, families are suffering, and even in our case, the children themselves are in agony because there's so much chaos within their own minds and, their own lives. My daughter made the statement once that she was in so much pain all the time. It's like she had multiple personalities and things going on as well, the dissociative part. And she said, I would try to save you guys, but I would have to try to sacrifice myself, meaning kill herself, and what's in her to save us. So my question to the professionals is, with all of your training and the oaths that you've taken to make a difference in the lives of people, how then can you sleep at night knowing that you're letting children suffer and laugh?
And to me, and Tracy is our guest on Ladies Night Radio, facelessnation.org is a website you can be able to check out. And Tracy, that to me, I think that's the key because, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, it taking that village to raise a child. It's going to take that village to be able to overthrow the ego of said doctors, to be able to make enough noise to be able to say, hey, you know what, it's not just one person. Not one person that's gone through it. It's going to take everybody, your neighbors. It's going to take other people that's witnessed it to be able to come together and overthrow that, because that's the only thing you can really do at this point in time, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I believe so because, at some point you can try to prove it and prove it and prove it, but, that's like beating your head against a wall. You don't get anywhere. And so one of the projects that I'm working on personally, in addition to the book, which should be coming out in September actually, and I'll be talking about that on my other website, which is transformationtracy.com, coming in the future, so that I can move into like overwhelm coaching and help other people move forward with their lives despite everything that's going on. But I want to put together a coalition of professionals, just all levels of professionals and parents and educators in the higher education realm, to try to attack that piece and unite people, because I believe there is strength in numbers. You need that support. And for the children especially, it's important for them to have that strong sense of self-worth and value. And, again, it's important for everyone. It's for the good of humanity. We have to figure out a way to solve this problem and just stop turning a blind eye to what's happening. Some people say, well, can you diagnose a psychopathic child? And a lot of professionals are saying, well, no, you want to wait until they're 18 and then do this and that and the other. But I knew there was so much stuff going on in my 2-year-old that I had to go find out what is a psychopath in a child. And my child scored 52 out of 53, possibly 54 on that psychopath thing at the age of 2. So that's another thing that, I think the professionals out there need to really embrace what thousands and thousands of parents are saying and incorporate that input into, the DSM manuals or the diagnostic manuals and the training, so that, they can start to really help make a difference in the lives of these traumatized children and families before, the problem is just going to get worse.
Yep. I completely agree.
Wow.
Tracy of Faceless Nation is our guest on Ladies Night Radio with hosts Brandon and Baby Girl. And you said you had some tips, right? Before we let you go, you have some tips that you can be able to share with us and the world about certain things?
Right, I did. Because overwhelm, it happens in your mind, but you also feel the stress in your body. And so I thought I would just give everyone 10 tips to bust the overwhelm. And the first one is to just start listening and trusting your intuition. Listen to yourself and trust that. Oprah herself said that she is who she is because she trusts her gut more than anyone else's opinion. And so sometimes it's a matter of just following the popular opinion or just doing what you know is right, the thing that you should be doing. So that's one. And the other one is,
real quick before you go to 2, when it comes to listening, especially nowadays, everyone seems to be distracted. Not just the kids, but also the adolescents and also the adults. We got all these different things from, online being a blessing and a curse at the same time. You got different types of distractions where, kids and adults don't even pick up a book to read no more. So when it comes to listening and trust your gut, I think it really reigns supreme now because of all the distractions, everything that's going on out there nowadays. Like, to me, I think that's crucial.
Right. You have to fight for it. You have to fight to listen because, like you said, there is so much noise that, is fighting for our attention externally but also internally. Yep. But that guidance is crucial. Listening to that little nudge inside is crucial. And so many people have just even forgotten, almost to the point that intuition ever existed or what it is or how to even do it. So very good point. Now, the other thing I would say is put aside your negative self-talk. We have to really monitor what we say to ourselves and the thoughts and actions and, the words that we use that just simply don't honor or serve us. And I think if we get that piece right, we won't ever experience life the same way again. We just have to, we have to really just monitor. Like a lot of people would say, oh, that was such a stupid thing to do, or, how could I be so dumb? Well, you need to really check that and kind of rechange those tapes out and put more, it's more than just positive thinking and all of that. You have to really look at how you speak to yourself.
Right.
So now the other thing I would say is mentally, one thing that really helps me is to start practicing for the success that you want to have in life. So you recognize it when it shows up, and then when it does show up and manifest, you'll actually know what to do with it. It's not just the law of attraction type thinking like you see on The Secret or something. As a matter of fact, like great athletes, I heard like the golfer Jack Nicklaus mentally practices where the ball is actually going to go when he hits it and also where it's going to land. So you've got to be that precise in your mental practicing of your dreams and actually seeing yourself going through those motions and then focusing on that mental activity, that mental practice, just like a highly trained athlete does, until the action itself becomes effortless. So it's almost like we need to give ourselves an internal makeover, if you will, so that we can view ourselves in a way that we may have long forgotten. We've got to be able to see the possibilities of changing our lives and what we can become, not just what we are right now. And I think that's what helps people to actually follow through on taking some of those actions that's going to get those lasting results that we want.
Right.
The other thing I would say is somehow getting to a point of absolute certainty where I think that a lot of us kind of live far below our spiritual potential and our abilities, and we kind of keep that hidden and locked away, maybe because we're afraid or there's a lack of confidence or, just because of our own insecurities. But if you look at it from the standpoint of, well, if you burn your bridges, then you don't have any choice but, to sit and vegetate in your own stew or to move yourself out of that overwhelm and to start taking those little actions and success steps that just begin to build on each other. And that's the type of skill that you want because that's the skill that's going to stay with you forever. So something else is, I think, stop defining who we are and whether we're successful in our lives by material things like our cars, our friends, our careers. We have to start to look at what makes each of us rich beyond measure that's on the inside. That's why some people who lose their jobs, I think, or their spouses or their possessions, they're so ready to look for a bridge to jump off of or something because they've kind of built the foundation of what makes them wealthy using the wrong value systems. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having nice things, but you can't let those things define who you are. And I think that, when you build your life from the inside out, you kind of tap into yourself and your beliefs at your core. And so you know beyond wavering that you are indeed the master or the mistress of your own fate. And you start to rise above your circumstances and I think your challenges, just sidestepping without hesitation or without limitation. And so if you can do that, with each new victory, you're going to kind of learn that just how much you've held yourself back. And maybe that's with outdated thinking or just wrong thinking, but you have to look at that and see, are the thoughts and actions that you're taking, do they honor you? Do they serve you?
Right.
And, I think that sometimes we just play the same tapes over and over and over, and it's like that saying, insanity is doing the same things over and over, but you're expecting a different result.
Right.
So, you have to realize you were living a life of lack no matter how much external wealth you possessed, because on your core self, you've been starving it, and it's impoverished, so you need to nurture that. And those other things, those material things, they're just not strong enough to sustain you during those storms of life when the hard times come.
Right.
So, something else I think people can do is we need to start asking ourselves new questions like, a lot of people want to know why they're not finding the right person or why bad things keep happening to them. Did they do something wrong? Or a lot of people have this notion that they're being punished by God or something, for something that they may have done in the past. And I think rather than that, start asking something else like, okay, that happened, now what? What lesson is it in there that I need to pay attention to? Because it's all well and good to say, think positively when everything is going great and good and you're not challenged, but I think your character is really defined by how you think and talk to yourself during those difficult times when the storms are really there.
Right.
And, one quote that I really love is by Nelson Mandela, and he said that, had he not been in prison, he would not have been able to achieve the most difficult task in his life, and that was to begin the change of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks, a lot to transformation and, just people's ability to overcome. And,
right.
I don't know if you guys have seen this in, people that you know or in situations, but people a lot of times give their control for their life to someone else. And then
right.
they want to blame everyone else for their unhappiness or the mess that their lives are in. And so, we start literally eating ourselves alive with the despair and the depression and negativity and all of this complacency and stuff. And, we don't serve the world by living small. We're not good
right.
for our children or our families if we're miserable. So, I think ultimately we have to remember that we are responsible for the energy that we bring to every situation, whether that's negative or positive. And we can explode like a volcano at every little thing, or, and then I think that negativity feeds on itself and just brings more negativity, or we can use that as an obstacle or an opportunity for growth and to kind of move beyond the pain or whatever is going on.
Completely agree, especially nowadays. Like I said earlier, we have so many distractions. We have also so many people who want an easy way out. So they'll
right.
look for the quick fix as opposed to, really working hard or really looking in the mirror and see, this is what I need to do to get better. Not just
right.
on the outside appearance, but also on the inside, which is more important to be able to make sure that you do have that mental toughness and awareness to be able to help make long-lasting relationships, be it if it's a relationship you're building on, a relationship you already have, et cetera, et cetera. That, to me, I just think that's, a lot of that is just real key. I mean, to me, a lot of people don't look in the mirror and they don't try to fix themselves. They feel like they're perfect, and we're all not perfect. To me, you're always supposed to look at yourself in the mirror every day and try to fix yourself because we're just not perfect. We're not. Every day you want to try to make it better. So
life is always a work in progress.
Exactly. Tracy, our guest on Ladies Night Radio. And as we let you go, I want to definitely thank you for taking the time to talk about your experience and to share the website with the listeners. And people can go to www.facelessnation.org to be able to get all the information. You can also go on the website www.indiegogo.com/Faceless Nation as well. Nexxlegacy is definitely about to make a quick donation on this website, so we'll be one of the first, and we're going to also make sure that we put it on our website to be able to share this with our listeners as well. And I can't thank you enough for allowing us to come into your world and share this story with us, because to me, it's a lot of this stuff I didn't know until now, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all so much and your listeners as well. And, we just extended our campaign time frame because we've just really started ramping things up. This is new for us as well, getting out there doing that. But We've had such a great response to everything, and hopefully this is the first of many interviews. I enjoy talking with you all, and I appreciate all of you so much for everything that you do as well. So it's been my honor.
Please come back, and we gotta make sure that we continue this push, because I definitely don't want this to be a one-time thing. I mean, I definitely want to share in spreading this word, because I mean it's important to our kids and it's important to their mental health, but it's also important to us as adults and our stability as well. Because to me, we're never going to be right unless our children is right. We're never going to be.
Absolutely. So it's that village mentality that you were talking about. It's going to take all of us, and not just to support the kids, but to rally around the mothers and families, because families themselves are under siege. It's not just the women, the children, it's the men as well. And if you have a strong, solid foundation of a family, we need to nurture that as well, because I think that's what's missing in a big part of our society as well, the honoring of the family relationship and dynamic, and we've just got to keep that going. We've got to bring that back.
Definitely. And I'll definitely get with you off the air, and maybe we can put something together where we can be able to, expand this nationwide and do everything in our power to be able to spread the word as well. And again, come back anytime, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. Really proud of you.
Thanks so much. Absolutely, not stopping. But thank you all so much, and you all enjoy the rest of your evening. God bless all your listeners, and just keep doing what you're doing as well.
Thank you for listening to the #1 radio station for the people.
Nexxlegacy Radio.